Boker Tov, good morning and Happy New Year. No, I haven't lost track of the months and the days, but today is one of the four Jewish New Years. Today is Tu B'Shvat. It is the 15th day of the month of Shvat, and this is the New Year of the trees, also known as the birthday of the trees, also known as Rosh Ha'ilanot, the head of the trees, just like Rosh Hashanah, the head of the year. And this is becoming one of my favorite holidays. Why? Because we get to drink, we get to eat, we get to pray, and because it's a really interesting holiday. So I want to tell you a little bit about Tu B'Shvat, what it symbolizes, why we observe it, why it's not in the Torah, but it is something that is celebrated, unlike some of the other holidays which are written about in the Torah. And I hope you will find this interesting. I hope you will find this celebratory because it is a fun day. Most of you probably remember from your childhood the only thing you may know about Tu B'Shvat, and that is planting trees. And you used to have a little blue box with a picture of a drawing of the state of Israel on it. It was a tin box, and you used to collect Keren Ami. You used to collect money and tzedakah and fill up that box, and you would send it to the JNF, the Jewish National Fund. And what did the Jewish National Fund do with that money? They planted trees in Israel because trees were scarce and wood was scarce. And so, in order to build a country, you need wood. And so people would buy enough for one tree, or they would buy a whole grove of trees, or a variety of things. But that may be from your childhood the only thing you really remember about Tu B'Shvat. When I was a kid, I remember planting trees at my synagogue in the suburbs of Chicago. We used to plant a tree every year. And tree planting in Jewish tradition is a really critical thing to do. In fact, when a baby is born, either a baby girl or a baby boy, the parents traditionally are supposed to plant a tree. Now, I don't remember exactly what kind of tree it is for the boy and what kind of tree it is for the girl, but the lesson we have here is that when these kids grow up and by the time they're old enough to get married, some of the branches from that tree are cut, some from the girl's tree, some from the boy's tree, and they are used in the creation of the chuppah, the marriage canopy under which the young couple gets married. I guess it doesn't matter if you're a young couple or an older couple. You can still have tree branches in your chuppah. I think it's a beautiful tradition. So, what is this concept of a birthday for trees? Why would we celebrate how old a tree is? In Jewish tradition, and certainly in biblical tradition, this is very important because trees and the product which grows on trees or on vines was critical for the economic welfare of ancient Israel and still is critical for the economic welfare of Israel. Produce. A civilization cannot live if they don't have things to eat. And much of what we eat grows from the earth, grows on trees, grows on vines, and so on. First, let's talk about the word Tu B'Shvat and what that means. Until we know where the name actually comes from, it's hard to understand the holiday itself. So, here we go. Tu B'Shvat. Tu B'Shvat. I've spelled it here in the Hebrew and in the English, the top line, the Hebrew. Now you'll notice, even if you don't read Hebrew, that there's these two little marks between the tet and the vav, which spells the word two. that means that it's an abbreviation. In the Hebrew language, instead of using periods between letters for abbreviations, as we would here in the United States, for example, U period, S period, A period for USA, Hebrew puts these little marks that look like an apostrophe between the last two letters of the abbreviation. So if this was a three-letter abbreviation, the little marks would go between the second and the third letter of the abbreviation, not between each of the letters. Because this abbreviation is only two letters, it goes right smack dab in the middle. Believe it or not, there is actually a name for these little marks, and it is called a chipchik. Chipchik, I know, isn't that cute? So, Tu Bishvat. So what that tells us is that this word is an abbreviation for something. Bishvat means the month of Shvat. The month of Shvat. B'Shvat, of Shvat. So we are now in the month of Shvat, and in fact, I'm going to give you a hint that these two letters combined give us the day of the month. So what we know about Hebrew months is that the first of the month, Rosh Chodesh, it's always pitch dark out at night because we have a new moon. No moon at all, or maybe just a tiny sliver of a moon. But in the middle of a month, we have a full moon. So if a month is 28, 29 days, approximately what day of the month is the full moon? Yes, some of you got it right out there. It is the 15th of the month. And in fact, all the Jewish festivals, I'm thinking about this now, except for Hanukkah, fall in the middle of the month, and Shavuot. But Passover falls on the 15th of a month. Sukkot falls on the 15th of a month. Purim falls on the 15th of a month. And Tu B'Shvat actually means the 15th of the month of Shvat. So how do we get to this little abbreviation here? Very easy. It's something known as gematria, which is nothing but Hebrew numerology. So every letter in the Hebrew alphabet has a numerical equivalent. Think about when you were a kid and you had one of those decoder rings, right? A equaled 1, B equaled 2, C equaled 3, and so on. So you could spell out these elaborate codes, which were pretty easy to figure out because everybody knows the alphabet. Similarly, in Hebrew, every number has every letter has a numeric equivalent. So rather than having to recite the Hebrew alphabet, I'm going to tell you what those numerical equivalents are. The tet is a 9. That is a 9. And how do we get there? Aleph, Bet, Gimel, Dalet, Hey, Vav, Zayin, Chet, Tet is 9. Okay. The letter Vav is 6. Aleph, Bet, Gimel, Dalet, Hey, Vav is 6. 9 plus 6 equals 15. Tu B'Shvat means the 15th day of the month of Shvat. Now, not to give you a mathematics lesson here or a lesson in addition, this is an unusual way to get to the number 15, right? You could say 11 plus 4. You could say 8 plus 7, right? You could say 10 plus 5. Wouldn't 10 plus 5 be, if I told you to take two numbers that add up to 15, most of you would most likely say 10 plus 5 equals 15. Our brains are kind of taught to think in units of fives when something is divisible by 5. However, there's a reason we don't write it that way in Hebrew, and I'm going to show you why. Didn't realize this was going to be show and tell today, huh? Okay, so I'm going to write this at on the bottom, and hopefully it will be big enough. And here it is, these 2 letters at the very bottom. In Hebrew, the letter Yod, this little line here, is the numeric equivalent of 10. The Hey is the numeric equivalent of 5. So 10 plus 5 equals 15. However, there is a law in Judaism that you may not write any of the letters in God's name sequentially. And the word Adonai is Yud He Vav He. And so we're not allowed to write Yud He together because it too closely approximates the name of God, and that would be blasphemous to do. The only place that Yud He Vav He is to be written with those 4 letters is in a prayer book or in the Torah. So that is a lesson on Tu B'Shvat. Now you will be able to amaze your friends and family anytime they ask. You'll be able to tell them that 2 is an abbreviation for the number 15. So we know that Tu B'Shvat falls on the 15th of the month of Shvat. And sure enough, when you look outside tonight, if you looked last night and you look again tonight, you're going to see a full, bright, full moon, a bright, full Shvat moon. In another 15 days, we will be in the month of Adar for Purim. So, more about Tu B'Shvat. I mentioned to you that there are 4 Jewish New Years, and I'm going to get to that in just a moment, because most of you know about the New Year that takes place at Rosh Hashanah, which we call the head of the year, because that is the new year for the world. That's the birthday for the world. That is the date on which the first of the month of Tishrei, that the rabbis determined God created the world. The second new year that we have is the actual real new year for the Jewish calendar, and that is the first of the month of Nisan, which is the month in which Pesach takes place, the first of Nisan. So I often try to explain this by saying that if I were to ask you what month our secular calendar begins and when the secular new year is, you would probably say January 1st, which we just observed. However, if I were to say what is the first of the school year calendar, you might say September 1st or August 15th or something like that. So if I were to go by a calendar for a school kid that they were going to use during the year, most likely it would start in August. If I were to ask you when a company's fiscal year was, that might vary. Their fiscal year could be from July 1st through June 30th. Their fiscal year could be from January 1st through December 31st. It really depends. So Rosh Hashanah is the new year for the world. It's like the world's birthday. So if your birthday is September 20th, your new year starts every year on September 20th. However, the secular new year would start January 1st. So the new year for the Hebrew calendar actually starts in the month of Nisan. That's the first month of the year. So that's the second Jewish New Year. The third Jewish New Year is something which we don't celebrate anymore because we don't have kings. And that was the New Year for Kings. And it was most likely a bacchanalian type festival with all kinds of revelry and drinking and God knows what else went on. But it was a recoronation ceremony for the king. So every year the king was given a thumbs up and said, we're going to keep you around for another year, and was recoronated. And that was filled with all kinds of frivolity and celebration and so on and so forth. But we don't have kings anymore in Israel, and so we don't celebrate the new year for kings. The fourth new year that Jews have is Tu B'Shvat. It is the new year for trees. And the rabbis of the Talmud established that every 4 years, there would be a new year, or every 4 new years, there would be a new reign of a new king. But the reason that trees are so important, as I mentioned at the beginning, is because without the produce from the trees, we have nothing to eat. So it was critical for the economic livelihood of ancient Israel. So I'm going to share with you some interesting factoids about Tu B'Shvat. But first I want to tell you why the importance of a new year for trees. In Jewish law, you are not permitted to harvest the produce from a vine or a tree for the first 3 years at least of that tree or vine's life. So if I plant a tree on January 1st, I would not be able to harvest the produce from that tree for 3 years. And then in the 4th year, that produce would go not to sell or to profit by, but would go to the priests and the Levites, because the priests and the Levites worked in the temple in Jerusalem, and they didn't have another source of income. So it was only from the beneficence of the Israelites that they were sustained through the food they got, and so on and so forth. So the 4th year, the fruit would go to the priests and the Levites. And then in the 5th year, you could begin to harvest the fruit of the tree, the fruit of your vines, for your own benefit, for your own use, and to sell. Now, this is very interesting because when was the birthday of the tree? Well, on Tu B'Shvat, of course, on the 15th of the month of Shvat. And that was the day on which you started counting. So let's say I planted an orange grove on the 15th of the month of Shvat. I would have to wait 3 years. That would be the birthday. And then a 4th year to give the produce to the priests and the Levites. And then I could harvest the fruit for myself, my own benefit, and for the benefit of selling the produce to make a living. Okay. However, let's say that I planted the tree on the 28th of the month preceding Shvat, which would be what Hebrew month precedes Shvat?
Here's a summary from Wikipedia. Shabbat HaChodesh takes place on the Shabbat preceding the first of the Hebrew month of Nisan.